Friends in the Corner podcast. Stories and topics from around the state of Kentucky. Well, we want to welcome everyone into Friends in the Corner podcast, stories and topics from around the state of Kentucky, and this was supposed to be our NCAA March Madness preview episode, but for those of you who've probably been following the news over the last couple days, in the last week, you probably know that things have changed up a lot, and the NCAA tournament is no more, along with a few other events as well. So we wanted to just kind of have, this is a little bit of a different episode here today to talk a little bit about what's been going on here with the coronavirus and everything that's been going on with that. And I have a very special guest returning onto the show here today as well, Mr. Greg Watson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah.
The world's starting to shut down, but here we are,
bringing
our stories to the people.
Well, man, I feel bad because I've been trying to get you on to a couple different episodes here, but every time you come on, it's always been a pretty rough topic to discuss. First was the death of Kobe Bryant, and now we have you on to talk about the coronavirus and stuff too, man.
Well, hey, those are the important stories. Some good shows to be a part of. Wish they were a little more upbeat, but hey, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Well, and we know that as of right now, people are really starting to take shelter, get themselves kind of ready, quarantine themselves off. So we're hoping that this episode can at least serve as a little bit of light in a dark time, a little bit of enjoyment content here. So, Greg, it's not going to stop us from doing a good episode here. So, and we definitely want to highlight you a little bit here. So, can you tell my guest just a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. So, as you guys know, my name's Greg. I work with Dan down at Castle and Key. We both give fantastic tours, so if you guys are ever in the area, come by and check us out.
After the quarantine.
After the quarantine.
After March 31st, hopefully.
After March 31st, fingers crossed, we'll be back out there. But, yeah, born and raised here in Kentucky, lifelong Kentucky basketball fan, so we're definitely going to talk about the team here in a little bit. Just because the NCAA tournament didn't happen doesn't mean that this won't be a team that I think we'll all remember for some time, so... but yeah, just a good old Kentucky boy. Love talking about sports and all kinds of different stuff.
And much like myself, Greg does have a little bit of Ohio roots as well. You're
not from Ohio, but I did spend my college years at Denison University, where I was doing college radio while I was up there. Served on the exec board, so definitely have a real passion for broadcasting and that kind of stuff. So it's always nice when I can use that skill set once again. So I appreciate you having me on the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Greg, as we were discussing last week, and a lot of you saw the preview that we had out on social media as well, we were going to be talking about the NCAA tournament, talking about the potential of how far we could see Kentucky going. We were even going to talk about how they were going to do in the SEC tournament and Selection Sunday as well. And then that has all been thrown out the window now as of Wednesday. Everything's changed up, and not just with the NCAA tournament, but so many other events have been canceled as well. Keeneland, they're going to run races, but they're not going to have fans there. The NBA has stopped for the time being. The Masters, everything has stopped except WrestleMania. It seems like
the only one going. NHL has suspended their season. The MLS, the MLB is going to delay the start of their season. So everything's getting delayed. And I don't know if you saw this morning, but just in the last hour, Governor Beshear announced the first coronavirus death in the state. A 66-year-old man out of, I believe, let's see, where did they say? Out of Bourbon County. Apparently, it was not just the coronavirus that killed him. There were some other factors involved. As most of us know, most deaths from coronavirus have to do with pre-existing conditions and other things like that. But first death, and all bars and restaurants have now been closed down.
Officially in Kentucky.
Carry out will still be available where offered. But dining rooms are shut down. And all bars as well. So
wow,
yeah, we're now the third or fourth state, I believe. I know Ohio's done it and California's done it, and now ourselves. So should see that across the country before too long, would be my guess.
It's gotten very serious very fast around the country here. I mean, it was Wednesday, we were at work, and just to give people a peek behind the curtain of our daily routines here, we got to work, and that's when a lot of stuff started coming out about things being canceled. That's when discussions about the NCAA was coming out. At that time, they were still planning on doing the tournament, just with no fans.
Yeah, that was, I think it was on Wednesday when we were at work that we heard that the SEC tournament was going to cancel, and then the ACC and the other Power 5 conferences, but it wasn't until late that evening or maybe early the next day that the NCAA decided that they were going to do the same.
And even in our industry, we hadn't directly closed at that point, but we were losing bookings left and right. So you started to see pretty much nationwide all the changes that were happening.
I heard from one coworker that just one day, I think it was Wednesday, 21 reservations called or emailed to cancel. I mean, I was expecting to come into work Friday. I was actually in my car. Had just left my house, was putting Spotify on, and saw that I had a text message from my manager saying that I should not come into work, at least for that day and then the weekend, and then got the email later in the day saying that we'd be closed all the way through the 31st. So crazy. Just kind of came out of nowhere. I certainly wasn't expecting for us to be shut down.
Yeah, and I think a lot of places it's been that kind of same story here. And so, and you like you said, we've already had one death that's already been reported. We have a lot of here in Kentucky, central Kentucky, where we're located at. There's a lot of stories of people that have been tested positive for coronavirus. So it's gotten very serious around here, and so we really encourage you, as you're listening, hopefully you're taking shelter, you're washing your hands, you're taking care of yourself and your health and your family and all this uncertain times we have and stuff like that. And, we're thankful too, like as far as things have gone so far, our employer's been taking care of us pretty well. But a lot of people in the service industry and many other industries as well may not get the same benefits. So our thoughts and prayers are definitely with them.
Yeah, it's gonna be a rough next couple weeks to maybe few months. We really don't know how this is going to play out, but the most important thing is that we all need to stick together and support one another as much as we can, but heed the advice of the public health officials as much as possible, and make sure that we all do as much as we can to try to prevent more spread and try to keep this as contained as possible, because this could be incredibly serious if we don't treat it as such. I mean, I know that China is already kind of on the other side, and they're reopening and getting back to, a sense of normalcy.
Italy's shut down right now.
Italy is shut down right now completely, and their number of deaths are, is kind of skyrocketing.
I think France has gotten there too now. I think they're quarantined.
And Spain's on complete shutdown as well.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really hitting Europe hard right now, and we are certainly going to be next. Mm-hmm. We're already starting to see it, but with the sort of gestation period here in the next couple of weeks, we could see the number of cases reach very high numbers. So just, everybody be prepared. Let's not freak out or anything like that, but this is serious, and we got to treat it as such.
Right, and we want to take this very seriously. We know that this is a very challenging time. For many of us, this is going to be a very historical event that we're going to be telling people for years to come. But we hope, at least in this time with this show, and it at least gives you some sort of entertainment and gives you guys something to enjoy just in the meantime we're in. So we're gonna still have some fun today. Try to have some light to a dark time here and stuff like that. So we'll dive into a few different things here, but let's talk about what we were mentioning before with the NCAA tournament. Before they announced the cancellation, their original plan was they were going to cancel the conference championships, and then they were going to play the first couple rounds with no fans. So what were your thoughts, Greg, when you heard about that? Do you think that was a fair compromise? Do you think, hey, if there's no fans there, was it worth playing to begin with? Or what was your thoughts when you first heard that first decision?
When I first heard that they wanted to play without fans, my first thought was, well, there goes our biggest advantage. The Big Blue Nation is, very supportive, and I think, I've
travel
always
well.
seen, we travel very well, and that's always been a big advantage for us in the tournaments, is that we can get in there, fill the stands, and really make every game kind of feel like a home game. And so, I was upset for the Big Blue Nation and those that had already made travel plans, but I thought it was good that they wanted to still try to play as much as possible. I felt that was something that we could all use, whether or not there were people there, but just to kind of feel that connection. That's what sports, is kind of all about. It's a way that many of us can connect with one another, and I think it's going to be very challenging to be without it. Going to be a big hurdle for us. But I was, upset that they were going to go forward without fans. I thought it was going to be really weird, but, good that they're still going to try to play, especially for the players. Guys that have been in it for 4 years, and this maybe was going to be their first tournament, may not have the same feel, but to still be able to play those games would be good. But on the other hand, it was like, if the fans can't be there, should the players be there anyways?
Right.
That's the thing, is we don't really know. They've banned gatherings over 50 people for a while, but, is under 50, is that still safe? I mean, any amount of groups of people getting together could be problematic. So I think they ended up making the right decision to just completely cancel. I would like to have seen them maybe postpone, but I understand that for college sports, it's very difficult to just put everything off and then go late into the summer. Personally, I would have liked to have seen that option left open. Just, for the players, I know it would have been a challenge to push the season past where it would normally end, but I mean, heck, the College World Series goes well into the summer. So it's I just feel so bad for the players that are going to, suffer in a sense due to this. It's really, it's not fair to anyone what's happening right now, to say the least. But, I feel for those guys and girls out there that, are coming to the end of their time as a college athlete. And it's really unfortunate that they're going to lose that. Luckily, the NCAA is going to grant eligibility, an additional year of eligibility to all spring sport athletes. But that, as of now, doesn't cover any of the sports that were ongoing, the winter sports like basketball. So maybe the NCAA will circle back around to that and decide whether or not they want to grant eligibility back to those players. With it being so late in the season, I imagine that they're going to be quite apprehensive about it, but it's extenuating circumstances, so we'll see.
Right. Definitely some interesting times. I know there was even some discussion here, and I don't think I think it's kind of faded off now, but there's talks about the NCAA tournament still going on in the form of a Sweet 16 tournament.
Yeah, which is the top 16 teams. I did hear about that. That would be interesting. I mean, I would be for it. Kentucky would get to play.
Yeah.
I want to see this team again. I've had a lot of fun watching them this year, seeing the growth from all of the returning players, Nick Richards, Emmanuel Quickly, Ashton Higgins. Those guys have come a long way this year. And I really feel for them because I think we had a really good shot.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be disappointing for this Kentucky team, seeing all the ups and downs that they've had this season. I want to talk a little bit more about that with you, Greg, about some of the highs and lows that Kentucky has had, both as a team and individual players like Quickly and Richards as well. But before we get into that, I want to tell you guys a little bit more about our Patreon for the Friends in the Corner podcast. Friends in the Corner podcast is supported solely by listeners like you. So if you want to help support our movement, go to patreon.com/FITC podcast and learn about the different tiers that you can support us with. A $1 tier, $5 tier, and $10 tier per month will help to give you guys access to some top quality content, give you guys some access to some individualized content for you guys as well, invites on the future episodes, and you're going to get your name shout out on every single episode of Friends in the Corner podcast moving forward as well. Join the likes of Tyler Witt, Trevino Woods, and Sydney Klinkenbeard who are helping to support the movement of the show. That's definitely something that I want to definitely hit on here is a lot about what this team has kind of gone through. That's why I think, like, even for us as Kentucky fans, we really didn't get to see this team finish, because from where the team started at the start of the year, Evansville, to where they are now, it's been a night and day change for the most part. There's still been some lumps along the way, but this team has drastically improved and grown over the last 6 months or so since they've started playing. And that's what I want to ask you about too, because you've talked about how you really wanted to see this team go. But what's been your thoughts about this entire season from start to finish, from right where we're starting, as we said, with Evansville, where that big traumatic loss, to where they are now? How do you feel they've kind of overcome that and grown this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, take it back even farther. First game of the regular season against Michigan State. We play a fantastic game against a good opponent, you know? And then to turn around from that game to just a few games later losing to Evansville at home in Rupp Arena was kind of ridiculous. I was at that Evansville game.
Oh, really?
I managed to get tickets, was with my brother, and we were sitting in the audience, and it did not feel real at all. The whole game. The energy in Rupp Arena was the worst that I have ever seen. The team was not playing well. Come to find out later that a number of the guys on the team were sick, apparently. Apparently some flu or something was going around the locker room, so there were a few guys that were not at 100%. But that was definitely a difficult loss, and left me pretty shell-shocked. I've been to a handful of preseason games or early season games like those. Never seen us lose. I've seen us struggle against teams like Transylvania, but still win. But to lose to Evansville early on was a real shock. But I think it was a very informative loss, if that makes sense. I think the guys realized, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought. We might all be talented players, but there's a lot of work that needs to be put in from the team perspective if we want to get to the point where we're winning the big games at the end of the season. And so I think you really saw them buckle down and sort of buy into that. You hear the stories about what's going on in the gym, guys like Tyrese Maxey being out there and as a freshman really taking charge of like the energy that people are putting into practice and sort of approaching it with this, like, we all have to be all in every step of the way. Cal always talks about how he really has to get guys to buy into playing for the team. When you've got a team full of guys that are going into the NBA, it's really hard to tell them, you have to stop worrying about your own stats and worry about what you need to do to help the team win. And if everybody does what they need to do to help the team win, then you're going to look good. The NBA is going to come a-knocking. But, if you play selfishly and this team never gets good, that doesn't look good for any of us. Nobody's going to succeed if the team doesn't succeed. And so you've seen the guys buy into that and the change over the season. There have been some low points along the way and also some highs. We've won some close games, but we've also lost some tough ones as well. I mean, just Tennessee a couple of weeks ago we lost. Then we go down to Florida without Ashton Hagans. We think this is going to be a rough game. We might drop 2 at the end of the season and then go into the SEC tournament off 2 losses. But instead, we turn around and mount a crazy 18-point second-half comeback against Florida with Ashton Hagans out of the game, and Emmanuel quickly fouls out with 8 minutes left to go. So we're without our 2 starting point guards, and we're able to mount a comeback against Florida in Gainesville, of all places, with 2 freshman point guards running the show. I mean, that's crazy, and I think that shows sort of what this team has been doing the whole time. You've had guys like Johnny Juzang and Keon Brooks who have had to be on the bench, but then when they get the chance to get in there and show what they've got, they showed out. Those 2 guys won us that Florida game, and coming out of that, I was like,
we got some depth.
I may have had my doubts about whether or not this team could win in the NCAA tournament. I knew that my thought was that if one of our starters doesn't have a good game, we could lose. It takes 1 or 2 guys not playing well, or the whole team playing just kind of mediocre for us to lose a game. But then it was like, we got some depth now. We've got 2 more guys that could come in and act like a shot of adrenaline and get this team going. So I was really excited for the SEC tournament and for the NCAA tournament, just to see what this team could do.
I think for me, one of the people I feel a lot for is Nick Richards himself, because Nick, I think this was his do or die year to really kind of step up. And I think for the most part he did. He had some challenges along the way, but for the first 2 years, he kind of struggled there until this junior year, and I think he had, like you said, that shot of adrenaline and to really make something of this year. So what's your feelings about how Nick's performance was this year?
Oh, that was so much fun to see him really come into his own. I think he had a fantastic season. Still a few games here and there where he had some of those old Nick Richard tendencies that I like to talk about. Not always having the best hands, looking kind of dazed and confused out there. This year he looked attentive in the games. He looked focused. He looked energized. He looked like he was playing with a chip on his shoulder. And I thought he did what he needed to do to make himself, a really valuable player to this team and improve his stock for the lottery going forward. So I'm really happy with the way that Nick Richards has turned out. Have to thank Kenny Payne for that, definitely. The big man whisperer, as they call him. You've seen it multiple times over the last few years that we were able to take big athletic guys and turn them into star players.
Cauley Stein.
Cauley Stein is the one that I've talked about a lot. Another guy that took 3 years to really come into his own. But, guys like, I've heard stories from guys like Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns that say after they left Kentucky, they would always come back in the summers to do workouts with Coach Payne at Kentucky. They said, I've never had a better coach who has worked me harder than Coach Payne has. Wow. Nobody in the NBA can get me going in a workout quite the same way that he can. I really, all of them say that if it weren't for him, they wouldn't be half the player they are today. So I'm happy that we still have him, and I'm happy that he continues to choose us over head coaching positions all across the country. People are after him because they know how good he is, but he stays here at Kentucky, and he has made some of the best big men that the NBA has seen in a while. You
got to keep paying him like Vince Morrow, man, so you can stay around. Let's change gears here and talk about Quickly and how he's had some development too. He was just named SEC Player of the Year among a few other awards here. So what's your feelings about how Quickly has performed this year?
He has been absolutely fantastic. A little slow to the start of the season. Was not on the starting roster there for a little while. But was coming in and putting up good numbers, making some shots, kind of playing with energy. And so then after a few games, Cal put him into that starting lineup and, kind of never looked back. I think he's been the best player on our team, as a whole over the season. Obviously, he won SEC Player of the Year. I was not expecting him to shoot the way that he shot this season. His 3-point shooting was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's, not something that Cal teams are typically known for, is having, you might have one really good shooter, but being a shooting, you usually have, a Booker, a Quickly, a
Lamb.
Deron Lamb. Yeah, exactly. And so I guess you could say he was that player for this team. And then there's some other guys that could come in and make some shots. Higgins here and there. Maxey when he had it going, but Maxey there towards the end of the season seemed to just kind of lost his shot. But he did what he needed to do, which was get to the basket and kind of do that dribble drive thing. Because neither Quickly nor Higgins is a sole dribble drive, get to the basket kind of guy. Higgins more than Quickly for sure, but I think Maxey definitely had that, quick burst of speed that can get him to the basket. But let's stay on Quickly. But yeah, he played really fantastic this year, and I think was very deserving of the SEC Player of the Year award. His defense was stellar as well. Just a true leader on the court. Kind of being the face of the team and providing that sort of energy and X factor. So that was really fun to see a guy come back and put in the work. And I'm starting to see that with guys at Kentucky. There for a while, it was just like, come for a year. If it doesn't work out, try your luck in the NBA or transfer elsewhere. I know we
Right.
keep seeing that time and time again. Guys,
Briscoe over Arizona now, and
yeah, all that kind of stuff. And so it's good to see that guys are realizing that this isn't going to be a 1-year easy task. I may have been a highly touted recruit in high school, but that doesn't mean that I'm ready to play in college, and definitely doesn't mean I'm ready to play in the NBA. So I hope that more guys see that. They see, oh, hey, here's a guy that stuck around for a second year, was not a starter, worked hard, got into the starting roster permanently, and was named SEC Player of the Year and is going to be drafted in a really good position, most likely.
I think that's what gave me some hope this year when I saw the players that returned, because we're so used to the reloads here at Kentucky that you finally got some talent. They're like, okay, they got a year under their belt. These were highly touted recruits that came into Cal's program. Maybe they just need a year to really get where they need to be, and we've seen it worked out for quickly very well for him this year to really make a career season. It made his draft stock even higher as well.
This team, though, yeah, a lot of returning talent. You've got Higgins and Quickly. You've got Richards. We brought in another grad student transfer in Nate Sestina. He was good. Nothing too special. But, when he was on, hitting a couple of shots, playing with some energy, grabbing some rebounds, he was definitely a good person to have on the bench. Level-headed, isn't going to make super silly mistakes aside from just, trying a bit too hard on defense at times and not being able to sort of get out of the way. It's a hard thing to do.
He was a good little piece there, like your Reed Travis's, your Julius Mays, all that stuff.
Not quite on the same level as Reed Travis was
no,
last year. He certainly played a much larger role within the team, and I think we all thought that maybe Nate Sestina was going to do that. And early on in the season, he was playing a lot, and I think Cal was trying to get him into the starting roster, or at least the first guy off the bench, putting up some solid minutes. But it's been very game to game for any guys that aren't in the starting lineup to see what kind of minutes they're going to play. Mm-hmm. There were games where Sestina played 20 or 30 minutes. There were games where he played 5 or 6. Same with Keon, same with Johnny as well.
What happened with EJ Montgomery? What was his season like, would you say?
He had a very, it was a solid season. It wasn't anything spectacular. There were games where he played really well and you thought, he's starting to unlock it, like he's starting to figure out what he needs to do. For him, I think it was still a confidence issue. Playing alongside Nick Richards, there was a lot of pressure on the both of them to really step up, and there just may not have been quite enough space for them both to make a really big impact. I saw that his bigger games were the ones where Richards wasn't maybe in the lineup as much. And so he got more minutes and was able to kind of focus in a bit. When you're less worried about making a mistake and getting pulled out of the game, kind of helps. So he had a decent season. I was really hoping to see more out of him. But just in the past few games, he was coming on nicely. He can make jumpers when he's really puts his mind to it and decides that he's going to play hard and get after it. He can get rebounds and be, a force underneath the basket. Definitely a good role player.
Yeah. And maybe he just needs another, if he decides to stay one more year here, maybe he just needs a little more time.
I hope that he will do that. Will stay another season. I think maybe it's hard to say with the way that the season has ended, how that's going to affect players' decisions on either to go into the NBA or come back for another season. I think he's one where he'll test the waters. He'll go to, work out with a couple of teams and get a feel for it. I think it's good that the NCAA and the NBA had decided that a couple years ago that players could test the waters, do some workouts, and then decide whether or not it's their time. I think that's really useful. I think you've seen guys that have said, "Oh, I'm ready," and then they find out they're not. But, "Oh, I've lost my eligibility because I decided that I wanted to try it." Now guys can test the waters a bit and then make a decision after getting a little bit of feedback as to whether or not they're ready to go into the draft. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I do want to make a little correction for myself. We were talking about, decisions players make to either go into the draft early or transfer, and I mentioned, Isaiah Briscoe at Arizona. I meant Jamal Baker. It's hard to keep track of everybody.
Oh my God. Yeah, Baker. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Though I remember loving watching Charles Matthews after he left here, who had decent seasons with Kentucky. Then he went to Michigan, got jacked.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That was fun to see. He was one that I wish would have stuck around. But, he went to Michigan, and that was a good decision for him.
Yeah.
So I fully support that. Kentucky will not be the program for every player.
Yeah.
It's a really hard environment for a young guy to play in. I don't think there's any other college program in the nation where you will have as much pressure put on you to perform day in and day out, to win games and to do it, with emphasis. The fans at Kentucky are crazy, and we expect a lot out of our players. And just the precedent that's been set since Cal took over, that Kentucky is a place for the top NBA prospects to come get their talents up and then get drafted. We've put out record numbers, not to mention that Kentucky is one of the most storied programs in history. It's one of the blue bloods. It's not easy to play here. It's not easy to play at Duke. It's not easy to play at Kansas or UNC.
Right.
But I think especially at Kentucky, you're a superstar. You're in the biggest basketball state in the country. We don't even have an NBA team. That's why Kentucky fans are so passionate about Kentucky sports, is that there's not a professional team around here to support in any sport, Yeah. When it comes to basketball, your choices are to root for the Pacers, maybe the Grizzlies, Cleveland, Charlotte. Those are all the closest teams.
NBA teams. And God knows Cincinnati sports in any level is not worth cheering for.
No, the only Cincinnati team that might be worth cheering for coming up soon would be the new MLS team, Cincinnati FC.
Yeah.
They've got a good fan base. They're building a new stadium, so maybe them.
Yeah.
But the Bengals, it's not looking so
Reds,
good.
yeah.
Well, Reds, no. So it's really hard in Kentucky to find a team to be passionate about without having to just pick a team elsewhere.
Right.
Most people that I know here that follow the NBA have just picked a team that they like. Most likely a team where they've had a run of Kentucky players. Like I know a lot of people that are Celtics fans because Rondo played there when I was growing up and was really good. So
Kentucky is known for the 3 Bs: bourbon, bluegrass, and basketball.
that's right.
And you can throw a horse in there too if you
you can
want
throw
to.
a horse in there.
Yeah.
Thoroughbred.
Thoroughbred. We'll make it count.
Emphasis on the B in the bread. So, I was going to make a point there about this being such a difficult environment to play in, and it's not for everybody. And so I, respect guys' decisions to go to another program where they feel they may get more playing time and they can sort of take a step out of the spotlight and focus more on basketball and less on their own image. These guys don't have the opportunity to just be normal guys. You can't even go out and just hang out with people without getting bombarded. You're famous.
Absolutely. Even on campus, like a lot of people think, well, they're college students. I went to college with a lot of these guys at the times with the Anthony Davis, Nerlens, and on stuff. They are outside their dorm. There's fans waiting. I remember I was eating at the Cadoba down there on campus, and there was someone sitting in a car until Willie Cauley-Stein came out, and the dude ran up to him, got an autograph. And they're always in demand around here.
Can you imagine being a freshman in college and you want to go out to grab a snack and all of a sudden you're bombarded by 15 people wanting pictures, wanting autographs?
Oh, yeah.
That's the life that they're going to live, forever, but
even if
they don't get the chance to be a kid, to make mistakes. There's just so much pressure, and Cal talks about that a lot, which is why it's so important for him that these guys rely on one another and that they build strong chemistry, because it's all they got when they're here. It's hard for them to go out and really enjoy being a college student.
But yeah, like you said, the celebrity of a Kentucky player is huge, and sometimes people want to step away from it. Even Cal's own son was ready to kind of go and make some stuff kind of, I don't want to say distance stuff, but add his own taste onto his experience going to Detroit Mercy there.
I think he went up there because he wasn't done playing competitive basketball. I think he wanted a couple of seasons to be on the court and start playing again. He came to Kentucky probably to have fun, but to learn. I think he's said since day one that he wants to be a coach like his dad, and there's no better set of coaches to learn from than those at Kentucky. But at the same time, he wanted to play, and so he decided to sort of set out on his own and do that.
And always have an opportunity to come back and learn underneath his dad, I'm sure, too.
Absolutely.
After his time is done.
I think we'll see coming up in the next 10 or 15 years a lot of guys that played under Cal that are going to start being coaches, and really good coaches, because say what you want about Cal, people like to say, oh, he's just a recruiter, he's not really a great coach. But there's no other program out there that is having to deal with the kind of turnover that Cal has to deal with. There are other programs that get a lot of big recruits, but they still have players that are going to stick around for multiple years and make their jobs easier. Cal is working with practically a brand new roster every season.
And like you kind of hit at too, not only is it just Cal that these players come to, but we talked about Kenny Payne before, Orlando Antigua when he was here too. A lot of players would come back and say this. It's not just the main guy; it's the whole system that attracted them to this area. To
Absolutely,
play.
But to take a group of players that all want to be playing at the highest possible level, they want to score lots of points, they want to. They want to leave college with a highlight reel. They want to be the number one pick in the draft. Well, Cal has to tell them, you may have to put that pride aside. You may have to stop worrying about your stats for a while. To get all of these guys to buy into that system, that is not an easy task. And for him to do that year in and year out and consistently get into the tournament and make runs, it's impressive. There's only been one season that he's been here that we didn't get in, which was a
I was here.
That was a hard season. We were just on the bubble too. We were first four teams out of the tournament. That was the season that Nerlens tore his
tore his
ACL at Florida, or against Florida.
I'll tell you
that was not fun.
I'll tell you about that season. I was in class. I was in a communication class, and the guy that sat next to me was Ryan Harrow. And Ryan had definitely took a lot of, he kind of dishes out too, but Ryan took a lot of hard hits from a lot of the Kentucky fans in that class. And the day after they lost in the NIT to, what was it, George Mason? It was Robert Morris. Yeah, when they lost to Robert Morris, and didn't see Ryan again. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these guys put up with so much from the fan base. Love the Big Blue Nation, but we can be tough.
You're crazy.
We're crazy.
Yeah.
We really are. I mean, the things that people have said about players over the years, like Nick Richards the last 2 years before this season, was just, it was just bad thing after bad thing. It was unrelenting.
Even in football too. Anytime football loses a game now, this is more recent history, but even football, after they lose a game, the whole season's gone. Can you believe it?
Can you believe it? I mean, it's been a lot of fun having a good football team, but you're right. People are
there's sports.
They're tough,
like you said. This is where their passion is. There's no pro teams here. This is the Kentucky sports.
This is it. We expect to win. We expect to win a lot, and when we don't, we're not happy about it.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is kind of a question I've brought up to a lot of different people when they come on to talk about UK sports on my show, is kind of the job of Cal here at Kentucky. So, as you kind of said, he brings these people, all these players in, and as he tells them, he's trying to help them to succeed in life, whether that go to the NBA or other places as well. And one, I guess, of the big critiques that Cal has had over his time here is that, yes, he's been getting in a lot of these high recruits, but there's so much turnover that this really hasn't turned into a full championship winning program, because he's been here for, 10, 12 years now? Just about 2009 was his first season?
Yeah, 2009, 2010.
So he's been here for about 10 years.
So this is his 10th, yeah.
And he's only got one championship to show for it. Been to 2 championship games. So my question for you is, now things have changed a little bit because of the current circumstances, but how important do you think it is for Cal to win another championship while he's here at Kentucky, to even for his own legacy's sake?
I think it's incredibly important for him to win not just one more title, but multiple more titles. I think we've all expected to win more than we have since Cal took over. With the talent that we've had to only have one national championship, I don't want to sound ungrateful or anything.
Well, it's
because it's been so great. I mean, we have won so many games. We have won more games than just about any other program since Cal took over, but we just haven't been able to get to the title game. But winning a national title in the NCAA is an incredibly difficult task. I think that if we had a playoff system like the NBA has, where it was a best of 7, even a best of 3, 2 out of 3, I think we win a lot more titles. But it's very, it's one game, either you win or you don't. And it's hard to win games, no matter how much talent you have, if you don't have the experience in there to keep everyone level. You can talk about, 2012, that title team. You can talk about how great Anthony Davis was. But I always say that the most important player on that roster was Darius Miller, in my opinion. He was a senior, the last holdover from the Gillespie era. Oof.
I was going to say, if you ever want to compare apples to oranges here, talk to fans that lived out the Billy Gillespie era here.
Yeah, we can get into that in just a second. But, the year that we won that title, Darius Miller was the 6th man, and I think he won 6th man of the year that year. But he came in, and, he was a very experienced player. He knew what needed to be done. He had been in these positions before.
And he gave up a starting position, right? Because the year before, wasn't he a starter at that point?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
He was a real team player.
Yeah.
He knew what he needed to do for that team to be successful. And we had some other returning players on the roster as well. We had
Jones and Lamb.
Yeah, Terrence Jones and Deron Lamb. Returners we weren't expecting. I think Terrence Jones deciding to come back for a second year was one of the biggest surprises that I have come across since Cal took over. As far as players returning, that's maybe the one that has surprised me the most because he was really good. Unfortunately, hasn't panned out so well in the NBA.
Yeah.
He's bounced in and out. Is currently out of the NBA, playing in the G League, but. That team had some experience on it, and they had a true senior that was good enough to start, and that's really helped us to win that title. But other than that, we've got the Final Fours and the Elite Eights. The stats are there, but at the end of the day, Big Blue Nation wants titles.
Right.
We want championships, and I have full faith that Cal will win more championships. The one-and-done era will be ending soon. There's been so much emphasis being placed on players' rights. Already, the NCAA has been toying with new rules allowing players to make money off of their likeness and things like that. And there's always talk season after season of what will be done about the one-and-done rule. And so, guys will probably start skipping college and going straight into the NBA, but I have a feeling that Cal's still going to bring in all of the best talent that's not going into the NBA, and we'll start to see those championships coming in.
Cal recently came out and said that he believed he had the national championship team this year. And obviously with the way things have ended, we probably wouldn't get to know that. But how did you feel like this team had the potential to make that run?
I really did, for a couple of reasons. First, great talent. And great drive. I saw a group of guys that looked like they really wanted to win games, and they were, celebrating and were super happy when they won. And then you could see when they lost that, that they were upset. They weren't crying or anything like that. It was almost that they were angry. They were upset with themselves that they had lost the game, And they had been through some hardships. This was a team that had been kind of hardened. And after that game against Florida, playing without Ashton Hagans and then without Emmanuel Quickly at the end, we won that game against a Florida team that has underperformed all season long, but has the talent there that could have been a really good team.
Right.
They win a couple more games and they're ranked. They were going to be in the tournament most likely. And then on top of that, this whole season, everybody's lost. No team has separated themselves. The difference between the first ranked team and, the 20th ranked team wasn't that big. Everybody had lost. Everyone had had an ugly loss. Everyone had had tough losses. But everybody was beating everybody. And so at the end of the day, it was going to come down to, well, who can get it done in crunch time? And we won a lot of games in crunch time. All of our games pretty much were close. There were no blowout wins. And there were no blowout losses either. We were able to make numerous comebacks. And so I really thought we had the best chance we've had in a while to win based on those reasons.
There are certain teams, I think, of Cows that when it comes down to what you're kind of saying, the grind comes down to the final minute, they perform better when the lights are brighter. Like we've seen some teams that we thought this team's going to do great in the tournament kind of fizzle out, and we've seen some teams where like, this might be a team that goes out quickly that have made pretty good pushes into the championship. So I think that this was a team that was going to be on the latter part of that.
Yeah. Let's see a few of those teams that made some good runs.
Before the year before our 40 our undefeated team, the 38-0 team.
Yeah.
I forgot who that was. I think that was the first year for the Harrison brothers, I believe.
Yes.
And they made it to the championship game against UConn they were a 4 seed. And I don't think anyone was really expecting us to make the championship that year. We were expecting it the following year, but no one was expecting it that year. I know I was really shocked by that team.
Yeah, so that was the 2013-14 season? Was that what that was?
I think so. That sounds about right.
With Alex Poitras.
Yes.
EJ Floral. That was Aaron and Andrew Harrison's freshman season.
That's the one that stick out where I think a lot of people at that point, because we are all of our recruits for the next year.
We were seventh or eighth. We were an 8 seed that year.
Yeah, we are. We were very good.
And we had to play the undefeated Wichita State Shockers in the round of 32. Beat them on a last-second shot.
We had a very tough schedule to get to that championship too.
We did.
Yeah.
And then the season, the 2010-2011 season with Josh Harrelson, Jorts, where we had to play against Ohio State, who was the number 1 ranked team.
Yeah.
And once again, I believe that was maybe the round of 32 or the Sweet 16. Mm-hmm. That was another season where our road to get to the Final Four put us through Ohio State and UNC. Mm-hmm. And that was an incredibly difficult season, and we made the Final Four. We went farther with that team than we went with John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins and the rest of that roster. Eric Bledsoe, a team that put out 6 or 7 first round draft picks.
Yeah.
And Eric Bledsoe hardly played that season. He was not a starter. He was a 6th man. We all said, what's he doing going into the draft? Now
he's at a very...
Look at him now. Yeah. He's on maybe the best team in the NBA.
Is he with Milwaukee?
He's with Milwaukee right now. Starting point guard. Yeah, no. We've had those teams where they've got that drive. They've got a chip on their shoulder. They're playing to show out. And I don't think this team has received as much love from the rankings and from the bracket people. They were consistently placing us at a 4 seed, a 3 and a 4 seed when we were ranked, in the top 8, where we should have been a 1 or a 2 seed. But Joe Lenardi and other people were saying, oh, the SEC is such a weak conference this year. Kentucky's not deserving of a higher seed. And then all this other stuff, people don't would not stop talking about the Evansville loss. You
Right.
know, the last few weeks, Cal was getting super fed up with reporters asking him about that. He's like, how many times are you guys going to ask me about it? Like, what more is there to talk about? We lost that game. It was a tough one. We had multiple guys that were sick. You know, I don't know what more you want me to say about it. It happened. Can we not move on?
Yeah, very early in the season too, where like, they are still figuring each other out at the start.
Duke lost a game to another team that was about the same level. Just a week or two after that.
Yeah.
And then Duke lost, 2 or 3 weeks in a row coming down the stretch, and they weren't moving in the AP poll, which is the one that they use for bracketology. The bracket people will take the AP poll and then all of their eye tests and all that other hoopla that they work with. But they weren't, Duke was holding fast and losing games, and we were winning games and in some cases dropping spots.
Right.
So I think this was a team that had some extra reasons to win, had that extra bit of motivation to kind of prove people wrong. Nick Richards, I'm sure he was ready to prove people wrong. People have been saying so many bad things about him during his first 2 years.
Right.
Oh, this guy's never going to be a good basketball player. He just doesn't have it.
Why are you still here?
Why are you still here? You're not getting any better. You look.
You just got
as my
started.
dad has said numerous times, that guy looks like he's playing high all the time, and he's from Jamaica, and so the Rasta jokes and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
But something changed in him this season, and he's flipped a switch, and he was really good. And I think part of that was that he was tired of people saying these things about him. He wanted people to, give him the respect that he felt he deserved.
This team, I definitely think, was better than people expected to be, and it's kind of sad to say that I feel like there will always be an asterisk by this season for what this team could have been. And I really do hope at some point down the road here, this team is honored in some special way because they didn't get to finish the job that they wanted to.
For me, this will be a team that I will always remember. It'll have a special place in my my heart.
Of the Cal teams, where does this one rank for you?
Oh man, there's been so many teams. I think his first season will probably always be my favorite team because to go from having Coach Gillespie, and this program falling from graces immensely. Go back all the way to Pitino. Pitino was a fantastic coach. He won us a title, and then he left. Well, Tubby Smith comes in, wins a title in his first season with Pitino's team, and then doesn't win another title. And, there's some fun teams here and there. We make some runs in the tournament, but nothing. Well, then Gillespie comes in, and we go from being, still Kentucky, not really getting the titles, but still performing and making it to the tournament most of the time, to all of a sudden, the program is almost a disgrace. Gillespie was, a drunk and was doing all of these other things.
Did some sanctions come down on Kentucky down there? I wasn't a fan at the time.
God, I was so young at the time. That was middle school into early high school.
This isn't
young.
KSR. We apologize, everybody. We don't know all of our
we don't know all of our facts to the T. Yeah. Definitely some things happened with Gillespie after he left Kentucky. I don't believe any sanctions were placed on the university at the time or the program. But to go from that to, I remember that summer being down at the beach, actually, with my family for vacation, and the news comes in that Cal is going to be our next coach. Somebody we had been looking at when they hired Gillespie, and they had passed up on him. They bring him in, and then all of his recruits flip from Memphis to Kentucky. All of a sudden, we got John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins coming in, and we've got Eric Bledsoe and all of these other guys. And it was just like a complete 180. It was the most exciting thing to be a part of. I mean, the energy at Kentucky just completely flipped. It went from this hopelessness, despair, anger at Gillespie for being such a, frankly, horrible person, to all of a sudden we got maybe the best team in the nation. We've got all of these recruits. John Wall was one of the first recruits that really had already had this like personality outside of basketball. I mean, he had his own song that his friends had written, the John Wall song, and like that swept across the bluegrass, and everybody's out here doing the John Wall dance, and it's like this whole thing. Like he's an image, and it was just so exciting. But that team and the 2012 national championship team are definitely up there, probably tied for first. But then I put this team, of the 10 that have come through, I would put them in my top 5. It was a tough season, but it was a fun one, and the wins were rewarding, the losses were tough. I myself was quite hard on this team at times. I had really high expectations to start the season because we had so many returning players. I mean, we haven't had a returning roster like this ever in the Cal era.
Yeah. Since the platoon era. And I really thought this could be our season. Going in, I thought, this team's good. Like, we've got returning players, some fantastic talent coming in. Heck, one of our recruits never played, another, 5-star top 100 recruit, never even touched the court, So this team will always be one that I remember, and probably a lot of that has to do with what's happened just in the last week, with everything being canceled and the whole not getting to see if they will, come to fruition. Yeah. And so with everything going on, I believe that this team will hold a very special meaning to Big Blue Nation down the road as well, especially when you look into the history of the program coming years. And I'm kind of glad that we've gotten to really, in the light of everything going on in the world right now, kind of have some fun on this show and really talk about how great this team was and honor them in a special way. Greg, I want to thank you so much for coming on here as well, man. So
man, thanks for having me once again. Hopefully,
we'll try. We gotta try to make sure we get a show for you that doesn't revolve around a tragedy.
Yeah, let's get something happy going.
I know, man. We've made lemon out of lemonades on this show, which I'm.
I liked our Kobe episode a lot. Some of my friends and family listened to it, and they really enjoyed it. And while such a tragic loss, we were able to talk about a great man and shed some light on the life that he lived. And so while it was a, negative thing, it was also really positive to be able to honor somebody so great. And it's been great to come out here today and, try to, talk about some positive things in the wake of such a horrible situation.
And we hope you as the listener have enjoyed the show too. Just in this times of uncertainty, we hope you guys had a good one. But Greg, for the time being, since we're all going to be kind of bunkered in all around the world together, where can my listeners find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on social media at the Greg Watson. All of my handles are the same, so that's both Instagram and Twitter. You can find me on Facebook with just my name.
And when we open back up, come do a tour with us.
Yeah, come down to Castle and Key. Ask for me and Dan. We'll take you out, show you a good time.
All right, Greg. Well, thank you so much for a wonderful episode, man. Can't wait to have you on again, brother.
Thank you so much, Dan.
All right, and that is it for our candid review of the 2019-2020 Kentucky basketball season. I want to thank Greg for coming on under the unique circumstances that we find ourselves in around the country today, and just talk a little bit about this team and try to make some lemons out of lemonade, as I said, in this very unique time that we're in. But I want to say thank you again to Greg. Be sure to follow him on all social media platforms at the Greg Watson. And while you're looking him up, go try to find us on social media as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FITC Podcast. That's FITC Podcast. Be sure to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/FITC Podcast as well. And email the show at friendsinthecorner@gmail.com. That's friendsinthecorner, all together lowercase, @gmail.com. But guys, despite the circumstances, thank you so much for checking in. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Friends in the Corner podcast. And despite the times we are under, we are going to continue to try to put out content for you guys to enjoy. So thank you for sticking with us. Hope everyone stays safe. Wash them hands. That's a wrap.